Welcome everybody today to our Wednesday workshop sponsored by APCUG. It's a pleasure to have all of you here with us. Many of you have been with us since the beginning of this, which is almost a year now since Bill started his workshops for Windows. Today, we are very excited to have Larry Fortna back with us again. If you were here for the drone workshop, he did that. He's back today to be talking about Mac PC and the operating system versus the Windows PC operating system. And so I think that's about all that needs to be said because we've got a lot to hear from him. So if you want to, Larry, go ahead and take things over.
Well, good morning and welcome everyone. I'm here in Florida and it's 73 degrees.
73 in Florida.
So I'm going to be talking about the Mac and comparing it to Windows. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at the moment. And let's get that out of the way. You should be seeing my desktop on my Mac Mini. And I'm going to be doing my presentation with Keynote. And Keynote is a Mac application that is similar to PowerPoint. And so you should now be seeing the opening screen. So life is short and Mac uncomplicates your life. So we kind of compared that from a Rubik's Cube to some simple straight lines. And I need to use my mouse instead of my keyboard to advance the slide. So Mac is an Apple product and they have a lot of different options to choose from. They have the Macbook Pro, which is a laptop device. They have a Mac Mini, which is what I'm giving my presentation on. And they have the iMac, which is a all-in-one, the computer and the screen, everything is built into one piece, which is going to be discontinued. The MacBook Pro also comes in a MacBook Air, which is one that has the ability to connect to cell towers. And for some reason, I'm having trouble seeing my mouse. I know it's there. There it is. So to talk about the hardware first, these are features that all of the Apple Mac PCs have. And Bluetooth is one of the features that has always been in a Mac, and only recently Windows includes Bluetooth in their newer, if you buy a new Windows PC, but the older ones that I still have around did not have Bluetooth. So if you wanted to use Bluetooth, you had to have a Bluetooth USB dongle that you would plug in to get Bluetooth. But that has been built into all of the Macs from day one. The other feature that they have is called Thunderbolt, and there are a lot of Thunderbolt devices, primarily display devices that you can use to connect to. And of course, they have USB ports. Typically, the USB port is, there's only 2 of those on the MacBook Pro. The newer MacBooks only have 1, and that is a USB-C connection. And you typically, if you want to put a lot of different things on it, you're going to need a USB extender of some kind. It also comes with Ethernet so that you can connect to your high-speed internet. And it has an HDMI display port to connect to. In my case, I'm using a 32-inch Samsung TV that is used for my display. And the HDMI output from my Mac Mini actually goes to a HDMI switch. And so I can switch different things to my Samsung screen. It also has audio in and out. Those are the little 1/8-inch plugs for getting your audio connectivity. And as far as the Mac architecture as compared to Windows, Mac uses something called library files. And there are two types of library files. There's the hidden library files, and then there are also some library files that are associated with each individual application. So you in the Windows world are familiar with the registry. And you may know that over time, the registry in a Windows machine gets larger, and it grows over time until the point where your computer slows down. And people think that they need to buy a new computer when in fact it's just because their registry has gotten so large. So the Mac doesn't have a registry to deal with. When you're working with Windows, even the movement of the mouse is stored in the registry. And so everything that you do has to go to that registry file. Application files, they're not stored, they're stored in folders and subfolders. And common files are stored in hidden library folders. Files are accessed with an application named Finder. So in the Windows world, you're probably used to the Windows Explorer. But in the Mac world, it's called Finder. And we'll delve into that a little later. Most applications on a Mac can simply be installed with drag and drop. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a person here in the community where I live. They had an older Mac Mini actually, and the computer had a motherboard problem, and the lady that owned that computer does the monthly newsletter for our community. And she called me in a panic because the newsletter was due out in a couple of days, and her computer was dead on arrival. So I brought her Mac Mini over here and took the disk drive out of it, and I mounted the disk drive, and I simply did a drag and drop from her application folder over to mine, and I installed Microsoft Windows Microsoft Office with a simple drag and drop. And then I let her use my computer to finish setting up her newsletter to get it distributed while we worked on getting her computer repaired. We'll talk about the installation file names a little also. But the extension names are DMG, which stands for Disk Manager, or Disk Image rather, and PKG files, which are package files. And in the Windows world, you're used to EXE files, executables. So there is a difference between the Mac and Windows in the types of installations file names. So a disk image file is a mountable disk image, whereas a package file is something that's going to execute and maybe ask you questions along the way. Most applications do not need a corresponding library, but if they do, then those folders will contain user data. And it's very easy to transfer applications from a Mac to a Mac. As I explained, you can simply drag and drop them from one computer to another, or one disk drive to the Mac. Or you can use Migration Assistant if you want to transfer all of your data files from a PC to a Mac. It's a very simple process. You do have to install a little executable on your PC, which is the Migration Assistant. And that allows you to quickly install data files and move them from your Mac or from your PC to your Mac. There is not a single point of impact like a registry, so that makes things easier to do. All of your applications are sandboxed, so it's less likely that you're going to get a virus with a Mac than with a PC. And if you go into the applications folder in Finder and you right click on any of the applications that you see there, you'll be able to view the content that is underneath those applications. If you just click on the application with your left click on your mouse, you're going to open the application. But if you do a right click, then you can actually go in and see all of the different content that's within that application. So, like I said, installing apps on a Mac use the file types of DMG, which again is disk image, and PKG, which is a package file. And because DMG are mountable disk images, when you get finished doing your installation, you should eject them. You can go into the, pardon me, you can go into Finder and you can eject them there, or you will have a icon on your desktop and you can eject it by right-clicking on that icon. Package files, however, are a little different in that they could ask you questions during the installation, things that they may need to know in order to complete the installation. And all of the installable files require a user password to complete the installation. And some of the apps that you may find on the internet are not Apple approved applications. And so when you go to install one of those, it may ask you for some additional permission, or it may tell you that it's not allowed. But you can simply go into the system preferences and allow that application and override the installation permissions. Doing that, of course, means that you understand that you're possibly installing something that could give you a problem. So if you do end up getting a virus, it's usually because you let it in. You have to approve every installation that gets installed on a Mac. Unlike on Windows, where they can be installed in the background without your knowledge. As far as the file system goes, there is no such thing as a C drive, like in Windows, or a lettered drive, a C, a D, a E. On a Mac, they use folder names to identify the disk drives. And extension names like .exe, .jpeg, .tiff, .pfd. One of my pet peeves with Windows was Windows defaults by hiding the extension names. So if you have a file called frog.jpg and frog.png and frog.txt and frog.exe, and then you've got multiples of those in different folders, it's more difficult on Windows to understand which frog you want. It's not impossible. It does show the type, but if you want to actually see the extension name in Windows, you have to go in and change the preferences to allow the extension to be shown. And in the case of the Mac, those extension names are shown by default, and it makes it easy to tell the difference between frog.txt and frog.pdf. And another advantage that we find that the Mac has as comparison to Windows is that the file sizes are smaller. So when an application is compiled to run on Mac, the resultant file is much smaller. It's Windows has got, you'll know if you've installed a Windows program that it installs many files. I call it bloatware. But it's not really. It's just that Windows needs DLLs and things to support the application, and so you end up with a file size that is much larger overall. Now, in the Mac, we have a thing called a search shortcut. It's called Spotlight Search. Or if you hold the Command key down on your keyboard, assume you have a Mac keyboard, and you hold the space bar, it'll bring up Spotlight Search. And Spotlight Search is a very quick way to open an application or to search for a file on your Mac. And it also has another built-in, less known feature. If you type in screen sharing into Spotlight Search, it will open up a box for you to type in the iCloud username, the Apple ID of a username. And once you type that in and hit the enter key, it will go out to the Apple device of the Apple ID of the person you're trying to connect to, and it will ask them if they would like to allow you to come in and see their screen, and it will set up a sound path so you can talk to the person on the other end. The two of you can speak and talk without using an external application. It's all built right into the Apple product. So I being a tech person, I get a lot of people ask for help, and if they just tell me what their Apple ID is, I go into Spotlight Search, type that in, and I'm instantly going to it will ask them to allow me to open up a screen sharing app with them, and then I can control their Mac and help them out. We're going to show you Launchpad in a little bit, and Launchpad is an icon that looks like a little spaceship that's on your dock at the bottom of your Mac. And it opens up every application that you have in big icons. And I'm going to show you that in real time here after we get through most of the discussions. But as you type letters, you type the first letter of the application name that you are searching for. And as you type that letter, it will bring up all of the applications that start with that letter. And as you type additional letters, it will narrow the search until the more letters you type, it will narrow it down to the exact application that you're looking for. This is what Finder looks like on a Mac. And this area over to the left is called a sidebar. And you can drop shortcuts to any of the folders that you frequent into your favorites and have quick access to those folders. You have a number of different options as far as how to view the files. And I'll get into showing you that in real time as we actually do that a little later on. I currently have the Mac operating system that I'm using is called Mojave. It's 10.14.6, and it has a thing called dark mode, so I can switch between light and dark. And I have come to kind of like the dark mode, so I've set my Mac up to use dark mode. And I'm going to talk about search here in just a moment. But I should also mention that the Mac operating systems are named. So Mojave and Catalina, the latest one out is called Big Sur. They've had names from 2008 and 9 all the way up to the present. And so Mojave is a couple of operating systems below what the current Big Sur operating system is, but this is the operating system that I'm staying with for the time being. But when you go into Finder, at the top right of your screen, there's a search window there, a search text box. And if you type into that area, it will quickly search through all of your files on all of your drives in milliseconds. It is extremely fast. And it has options available to narrow the search by kind. In this case, I've typed in Mac versus PC, and I have a lot of different files that would come up if I just left that by itself. But in this particular case, I wanted to only find files that are presentation files, such as Keynote files, which are denoted by .key extension, or PowerPoint files like PPTX. Those are all presentation files. And ODP is Open Office presentation files. So the search capability in Finder is just flat out awesome. And it's extremely fast. Now, I mentioned this a little earlier about being less likely to get a virus on a Mac. For one thing, you have to give your approval for any application to be installed. You have to type in the password that you use to open your Mac and approve that application before it will be installed. And so if you do get a virus, it's most likely because you actually approved it. Applications are sandboxed, so they don't have access to each other unless it's through a common library. So there are some things, such as printers, that use a common library. but otherwise the applications themselves have everything that they need in the folder where the application lives, and any of the data files associated with that application would be stored in a library file that's associated with that particular application, not a common library, but a application specific library. And those library files, like the common library, they're hidden, so you don't see them by default, but it is very easy to make them viewable by simply holding down the Command key on your Mac keyboard and pressing the period key at the same time. And that will open up Finder to show all of the hidden files. And then you can repeat that Command period key to close all of those hidden files. Only the administrator access allows files of other users to be accessed. And non-app store applications require your specific approval unless you set them up in your system preferences to override them. So in some cases, you may go to install an app and it's going to say, this is not an approved application. You need to give me specific permission. And I snapped this screenshot just a couple of days ago. Again, this is why I don't use Windows anymore. Windows has got so many holes in it, so many places to allow hackers to control your computer. I have never gotten a virus on my Mac computers, although I do use an antivirus piece of software on it, and I'll show you that in a moment. But Windows is constantly getting hacked, and it is become very insecure. This is what the Launchpad that I spoke of earlier looks like. So when I go into the icon that looks like a little spaceship in my dock, it shows me all of the icons in big icons. So as I've gotten older, my eyesight is not as great. So this is really easy for me to use to find an application. And if I start typing the first letter of the application, everything that starts with a letter other than that will disappear. And only those applications that start with the first letter will show up. And each subsequent letter that you type in reduces that subset until you're down to the very application you're looking for. And I did say that I do use an antivirus protection, and I use Avast. Avast is, as many of you know, a free application. You don't have to purchase it. In fact, we've had Avast representatives at our computer club come in and give talks, and even the presenter does not use the paid version of Avast. So in the case where I usually get an indication that an infection has been blocked, normally that would be an exe file or something that might be found in an email. But in this particular case, it was a JPEG file. This is strictly just an image file. And it used to be that I didn't believe that you could get infected by opening image files, but the hackers have figured out how to use those to their advantage. And so we still have to run virus protection for things like that. This is a comparison of Windows versus Mac. So those of you that are thinking about switching to a Mac at some point in time, this is a comparison to show you how similar the Mac is to Windows. So if you're a Windows user, you're familiar with the Task Manager, or maybe you've installed Process Explorer to view the tasks that are running on your Windows machine. And the Mac computers, PCs, they also have that capability, but it's called Activity Monitor. And so with Activity Monitor, you can see what all of the resources are being taken up by your applications, how much memory is in use, how much CPU process is being taken up, and you can also kill any application from the Activity Monitor. And if you're familiar with a PC, you know that they create restore points. And on a Mac, they are called Time Machine. It's an app called Time Machine, and it does continual backups. It does them on an hourly basis, a weekly basis, a daily basis, a monthly basis. So as long as you keep the Time Machine turned on, it is doing continual backups, and it makes it extremely easy to go back in time to any point in time and restore a file. So if you've been working on a Word document last week and you've made many, many changes to it over the past few days, and then maybe you've deleted something that you had done earlier, the Time Machine allows you to go get a copy of that particular file, and you can either replace it or you can just make a copy of it, and then you have access to the file that was done some time ago. Now the PC you may be familiar with uses Cortana for, which is in Mac world, we use Siri. All of the Apple devices, such as my phone and my iPad and my Mac Mini and my MacBook Pro, they use Siri. So I can talk to my Mac to have it open applications and do things like that, same as Cortana. PC uses Control Panel. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with Control Panel, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail a little bit here. But the Mac uses the same thing, but it's called System Preferences. And as you'll see in a slide that I have coming up, it's far less complicated. So when I opened the presentation, I talked about uncomplicated versus complicated. And I'll show you how that comes up in System Preferences. The PC uses a device manager. You're probably familiar with that if you've got the PC. And on a Mac, they use a thing called System Report. And System Report can be found by going to the upper left of your screen and clicking on the Apple icon. And you'll find the System Report in there. On a PC, in Windows, you use Windows Explorer to navigate to your files, whereas on the Mac, we use an application called Finder. And we've talked about that a little bit already. And this is what Time Machine looks like if you open it up And over to the right side of the screen, you will see the dates. And as you move your mouse pointer up and down, you'll be able to select a date in the past. And when you click on that, these groups of the folder that you happen to be on at the time, they're going to scroll to bring forward the one that was back in that period of time that you're looking for. And you can then access the file directly with the time machine to restore it. You can also use the time machine backup. So I keep a 2 terabyte SSD drive hooked up at all times. I'm recording my backups. And if something should happen, I can reboot my Mac and it will offer me the choice to either reboot into my time machine or reboot into my disk drive. And this is a good way to test that your backups actually work. I can't tell you how many times over the years when I was using Windows computers that something would happen and I religiously made backups. And when those times occurred and I went to do a restore from my backups, I don't believe I ever had one that actually worked. I always had to end up reinstalling everything from the ground up, which because I have so much stuff, it would take me 5 days to get my Windows machine back in order once something had gone wrong, because I was never able to get restores to work. Now, that may have changed. It may not be that way today because I haven't used my Windows machine since basically 2012 when I got my first Mac. I do have 2 or 3 Windows machines, which I have used for gaming, and we'll talk about that a little later. And what did I just do? I clicked on something that I didn't want to click on. Let's go back to here. Well, I just did it again. And again. Let's try the down arrow. All right, instead of using the mouse. This is the system preferences versus control panel. And if hopefully this is going to work, I'm going to press on this. There we go. So you're familiar, if you're on a Windows PC, of the control panel. And a control panel is much more complicated. And one of the things that has always drove me nuts about Windows was when I wanted to work on my printer and I went to the control panel to find printer, I would go down automatically looking under the P's to find the printer. And Windows, for some reason, put everything under devices and printers. I could never understand why they would do something like that, but they did. So if we go back over here to the system preferences, this is what you have to set up on a Mac to make it personal to your uses. There's not a whole lot to it. You have the time machine set up, which you can go into here, and you got date and time. You've got some accessibility things that you can set up. You've got Siri, users and groups, parental controls, iCloud, internet accounts, the App Store, where you can install apps for your Mac or purchase apps. and of course network for setting up your Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth for connecting all of your Bluetooth devices, and sharing displays, energy saver, keyboard, mouse, trackpad, printers, and scanners, sound, and a startup disk, so you can actually specify which startup disk you have your computer start up on. And of course you have your desktop and screensavers. You have your dock things that you can set up, and mission control, which we're going to talk about. And I told you about Spotlight Search earlier, so you can have access to Spotlight Search here. So again, if you compared the two, you'll see why I have said that the Mac uncomplicates your life. It is just, that is so much easier to use. And I have always recommended the Mac for seniors, folks that have difficulty with all of the complexity of Windows. And I have converted quite a few folks over to the Mac. And hopefully that's what we're showing you here today, that when the day comes that you need to upgrade your computer, you'll consider the Mac. Mission control is another built-in Mac function that allows you to create multiple desktops. And then you can switch between those desktops by using the control key on your keyboard and then using the left and right arrow keys to shift between desktops. And because I'm doing a full screen presentation in Keynote, I won't be able to show you that until I bring this down out of full screen, but I will show you this after we get through the presentation. And we talked a little bit about Activity Manager, or I'm sorry, Activity Monitor. Activity Monitor is the equivalent of Task Manager on a Windows PC. And it allows you to view all of your processes that are running. You can view the CPU occupancy, the memory, energy, disk activity, network activity, and you get a graph of your CPU load, and etc. And if you have an application that you need to kill because it's froze up for some reason, which is pretty rare, but it does happen, you can go in here and click on the little X in the upper left-hand corner to force close an application. And there is a search text box over on the right that allows you to quickly search for a particular application that you might want to be looking for. One of the things I did not talk about in the opening statements was one of the major differences between a Mac and a PC. If you're on a Mac, the open, close, minimize buttons, those little icons, little buttons are in the upper left corner of your display, versus on a PC that you've been used to, where the open, close, minimize, maximize, those little buttons are on the right side of Windows. So Mac did not want to, I guess, infringe on patents or whatever with Windows, so they put theirs on the left side. And that would probably be the biggest thing that you'll notice when you switch between a Mac and a PC. Now, if you do still need to run a Windows program, you're not out of luck. You can actually run a Windows program in a couple of different ways. One of them is to have dual boot, because the Mac uses the Intel chips. So you can have a dual boot and boot into Windows. Or the other way that you can boot into Windows is not actually boot into Windows, but to actually open Windows as a windowed application in a program called Parallels Desktop. Parallels Desktop is not free. It costs you $79, but it's well worth it if you still want to have access to your Windows world. And I have every Windows every Windows operating system from, I think, Windows 3.1. I have Windows XP, I have 8.1, I have Windows 10, I have Windows 7, I have Windows Server 2012, I have Windows 2000. I've got them all. And they are simple files that you can open up in Parallels Desktop, and you have complete access to your Windows program. And your Windows program can see the files on your Mac as well. And these files are stored as a single file. Now, it's a big file. I have a Windows 7 file that is, 150 gigabytes in size, because it's a Windows program operating system I've had for years. But if I want to back up a Windows program, it's one file. I simply copy that one file to another disk drive, and I have backed up all of my Windows applications. It is, you don't have to reinstall anything. You simply open that other file up as your backup, and you're back up and running again. So Parallels Desktop is a virtual, allows you to open your operating systems as a virtual machine. And you can have multiple Windows operating systems open at the same time. So I can switch between Windows 7, Windows 10, and Windows 8.1. I can have them all three open at the same time on my Mac computer. Now, Easy Find is not, doesn't come installed with the Mac, but it is a free application. And it's one that I kind of like because it gives me some search capabilities that I can set up to search only folders or file contents and things of that nature. Although the built-in search capabilities of Finder are probably even better than this, but I didn't really discover how well that search feature worked before I had actually gone out and installed Easy Find, which was free. So it is something that I kind of recommend if you like a different way of finding applications or files and what might be in those files. And for you who are still on Windows, here's a free Windows Explorer replacement called Free Commander XE. You can search for that on the internet, and you can open that up, and that gives you a different way to find your files other than the Windows Explorer that comes with your Windows PC. Now, this is a program I highly recommend that you would purchase with your Mac, and it's called Clean My Mac. There may be a Clean My Mac 5 out now. I have Clean My Mac 3. And you can go into the application folder in Finder and just delete the application. But if you do that, you're not going to delete those library files that we spoke about earlier. And that's where Clean My Mac comes in handy, because it will uninstall not only the application itself, but all of the library files and all of the hidden files that are associated with that application. Now you can choose whether to uninstall all of it or leave some of it behind. But if you check the checkbox on the center window over here, it will completely uninstall that application when you hit the uninstall button. It has some other features about cleaning up system junk and large and old files, but my primary purpose for having Clean My Mac is to uninstall applications and make sure that I get everything uninstalled and don't leave anything laying around. One of my biggest beefs with Windows has been the endless updates. Not only do they interrupt me in the middle of something that I'm doing, but oftentimes they break something. We here in this community on our computer club have had to go around and get printers working again after people have done an update to their Windows operating system. And we have one person here in the community, and that his sole function is to go around repairing Windows that gets broken because of updates. Like I said, I did away with Windows back in 2012, except for a few that I do keep around for gaming and things of that nature. And I do use Parallels Desktop, of course, to keep Windows operating systems around for something that rarely I might find there's not a Mac equivalent, and I have to use Windows. But there are minimal updates on a Mac compared to Windows, and they don't come in and just install themselves right in the middle when you're doing something. You actually have to request those updates to be installed. So it's less likely to require updates in the first place. But when they are required, you can choose when and if to install them. I haven't talked about DLLs yet, but I think this is a good point, good place to talk about those, since those of you who are watching, or probably a lot of you, are Windows computer users. And I don't know if you're familiar or not, DLL stands for a Dynamic Link Library. And when you install a Windows program, Windows installs anywhere from 1 to many, could be 40 or 50 DLLs that are required because they each contain some piece of code that is all linked together at runtime. And so I try to explain this the easy way is, let's say that you have a printer of some kind, and that printer company comes out with a new printer that has a new feature in it. Maybe it has a scanner in it. And for that scanner to work, it requires that that printer DLL, the common DLL that's used by all the printers, it needs to be updated to incorporate those new features. Your DLLs all have a revision number associated with them. And you cannot install an old DLL revision number over a newer revision. So if for some reason this printer company puts out an update that includes something for their scanner, and they put out a DLL to fix that. And it turns out that DLL has a bug in it. You can't go back to the previous DLL. They have to release a new DLL to fix the problem. And this is one of the major reasons why Windows continues to have problems over and over and over and over again, is because of DLLs. So Mac does not have DLLs. Another ease of use example is screen capture. So on Windows, you have a button on your keyboard called Print Screen, and you press that button and you wonder what happened. You don't see the file, nothing really takes place, except it has copied it to the clipboard. And then if you want to see that file, you now have to open up an image editor and paste that clipboard into the Paint program, for example. On the other hand, Mac has some built-in functions called, if you hold down the Command key and the Shift key and you press the letter 3 on your keyboard, you will capture the entire screen and save it to a file all in one operation. You'll save it on your desktop. If you hold the Command Shift 4, it will let you capture a region on your screen, and you can do a little rubber band around that region, and then it will save that to a file on your desktop. So it's screen capture is another simplicity operation as compared to Windows. Now, Airplay is another Mac feature that has been built in since day one. And Airplay allows all of your Apple products to work seamlessly together. So I have Apple iPhones and iPads, and I can share do screen sharing from my Apple device. Hold on, I got a call come in. So I can share my screen with my iPhone to my Mac computer. But I do need something on my Mac computer to assist me with that. And so there is a piece of software that you have to purchase called Reflector. And it's made by a company called Squirrels. And I have the Reflector Teacher version of that, so that when I give presentations where I used to do it in person, and I would have to go to somewhere where there was a projector, I would be able to share not only my screen with the projector, but maybe anyone that was in the audience who had an Apple device. And I could switch between them. So the other thing that you can stream, and you don't require any additional application, is if you have an Apple TV. An Apple TV is a little streaming box that you hook up to your television to stream content from your computer. And these symbols down here that you see are the symbols of what the Airplay icons look like in the Airplay and Airstream. So you can stream your Mac to a Fire Stick with a free program. I think it's called Airstream, or you can purchase AirPen Pro for $5. And you can then stream your Mac to a Fire Stick, which is hooked up to your big screen television. And all of this is seamless, and it's supported on all Apple devices. And people ask if there's a learning curve. And of course, there's a learning curve associated with anything when you're going from one thing that you're familiar with to something that you've never used in your life. So there is going to be a learning curve to go from a PC to a Mac, but it's certainly no less than going from Windows 7 to Windows 8. Or certainly no more. I mean, it's probably less. Like I said, one of the biggest things that you have to get over is where the minimize and maximize buttons are. On a Windows PC, they're in the right corner, and on a Mac, they're in the left corner. But other than that, most everything is easier to use when you understand what those features are that are similar to Windows. So we've talked about some of those, like backup and control panel. They just have different names. They have time machine and system preferences, for example. And the learning curve is not that difficult. Most of the seniors that I have convinced to get a Mac have found it much easier once they spend a little time getting over the initial hurdle. So now we talk about the costs of a Mac versus a PC. And of course, if you're going to get a brand new Mac laptop of some sort, you could end up spending a couple $1,000s. But you can buy used, and they still work perfectly well. A brand new Mac Mini, which I'm using a 2012 Mac Mini, which I bought. Well, actually, this is my second Mac Mini. I sold my first one. But you can buy a new one for about $800. But you can also find refurbished units for around $200 to $300 at most. But I prefer the model year 2012, and I'll explain why. The 2010 through 2012s all work, but the 2010 and 11 are not going to give you some of the features that the 2012 does. So when I'm looking for a used Mac, whether it be a laptop or a Mac Mini, I look for model year 2012 because in 2013, Apple, in their infinite wisdom, decided they were going to solder in the components for the memory and disk drive, so you can't upgrade them. Once you bought your computer, if you didn't spend enough money and at the first go, and then later on you decide you need more, you're stuck. You got to sell your computer, your laptop, and then go buy one that has the newer upgrades in it. So I look for used models of the 2012 model year, and then I can go in, I can buy those very cheaply, and I can expand them by upgrading the SSD drive and memory to make them extremely fast and up to date. One thing we didn't talk about was the upgrades on a Mac versus a PC. If you've been used to PCs, every so often when Windows comes out with a new operating system, they'll give it away to you for free at the beginning. And then after that time period goes by, you got to pay for it later on. And they charge around $100 to $120 for an operating system. On the other hand, Mac does not charge for their upgrades for their operating systems. You can get any of the Windows operating systems for free. And you won't be buying a new Mac every few years like you're likely to do with the PC, because your Mac will still will be performing like new 2 years down the road. So instead of crawling along at a snail's pace that happens with a Windows PC. Now you can make your Windows PC fast and update again by reinstalling the operating system and then reinstalling all your applications, which could take hours and hours. But with the Mac, you're not going to be needing to do that. These older devices work just as well as the newer ones. I am still able to upgrade all of the operating systems that Apple has come out, even on my 2012 model. This presentation was prepared on an application called Keynote. It's a free application, but only available on the 2012 and later model operating systems. So High Sierra, you'd have to have a 2012 computer, Mac Mini or laptop in order to get the free version of Keynote. So most Windows applications have similar corresponding applications. And so you're using PowerPoint or Microsoft Word or something like that to prepare presentations, whereas Keynote is what I'm using here to prepare this presentation. And most of the Windows applications have corresponding applications. They may have a different name, but they do similar things. And many of them are better, even better than a PC. And I'm going to talk a little bit about BlueStacks. I'll show you that in a moment also. And BlueStacks applies not only to Mac, but also to Windows PCs. And it is a free application that you can install to run Android software on either your Windows computer or your Mac. And it's free, and it does allow you to run anything that's made for Android. And I'm going to show you that when we get out of the PowerPoint presentation. So this is a little off topic, but Mac is not necessarily a great gaming platform. That's probably one of its biggest drawbacks. The graphics card that's in it is not as powerful as you could get in a graphics card for a Windows machine. I've paid $400 and $500 for a graphics card for my Windows computer to do gaming with. And I could do that with a Thunderbolt add-on on my Mac, but they are pretty pricey. So I do my gaming on a Windows computer, Windows desktop computer, with a reasonably good graphics card. And I'm going to recommend a game for those who do gaming, and it's called Farm Simulator, called Farm Simulator 19. I believe there's one Farm Simulator 20 now. But I used to tutor an 86-year-old lady who lived here in the park with this game, and she was using it for memory retention. And it had multiplayer support and fabulous graphics. And so again, that's a little off topic. Let's go back. Probably most of you do not know that I'm also into 3D printers. And so I make a lot of my own parts and things. And so when I was doing gaming, I made this control box that you see over here that has 4 levers on it and has 6 dual position switches and 3 buttons to control all of the different hydraulics and things that I would find in the game itself. And I 3D printed the steering wheel, steering knob for my steering wheel from TMX Thrustmaster. So that was my gaming setup. And I'm not going to actually click on this, but This was, if you get a copy of this afterwards, you would could go in here and view the farm simulator running. And this is probably a topic for another day, but it depends on if we have time or not, to talk about WISE IP cameras. And this is 4 of my IP cameras that I can view in BlueStacks. And so this is the end of the PowerPoint or the keynote presentation. But I am going to jump out of here for a moment and show you around real quickly to go live on my computer to show you some of those features we have talked about.
Larry, please take some time after you're doing your live demo to show us your WISE cameras, please.
Okay. Again, I didn't know if we would have time for that, but yes,
Anything for WISE.
okay. I have probably maybe eight cameras now. So yes, we'll talk about those. So one of the things I talked about in the presentation was the ability for something called mission control. And mission control allowed me to switch between desktops. So if I did a right click, for example, holding the control button and the right arrow, I could switch through different desktops. This particular desktop just has a screenshot image of something I did with my drone the other day, and I captured a picture of an osprey over here by the shopping center. But I can switch through all of the different desktops that I have on my PC. So for example, if I open Notes up in this particular desktop, when I switch to another desktop, you see that application's not there. So I can quickly switch between the applications just by holding the control key down and the left and right arrow. Again, that's called mission control. This is what it looks like. If you click on the mission control icon, you can see that I have 6 desktops currently configured, and I can add more or do away with some of those. And I explained to you about Launchpad. This is how we're easily able to go in, and I can do command and right arrow key to scroll through all of the different screens of different applications that I have, or I can simply type a letter. So if I type the letter O, all of the applications that start with the letter O come up, and everything that does not start with the letter O goes away. And the more I type, the closer it gets until I'm down to the final application. If you go into the Apple icon in the upper left corner, you'll find System Preferences. And I also keep an icon in my dock that allows me to get into System Preferences. And this is, as you know, is the equivalent to the control panel in Windows, except everything is far easier to use. I can select my sound devices, for example. I can select my input and output. I can select sound effects and things like that. Or I have options for my desktop screensaver, my dock, spotlight search, and the like. Also, if you go up into the Apple icon and go to about this Mac. It will tell you what the current operating system is. Again, I have Mac OS Mojave. And I can also go into the storage and see how much disk space is available on what drives that I have installed, how much memory I have, and I can go to support and get a user manual that tells me everything about my Mac computers. And I can also go into get service from my computer if I needed it. This area along the bottom where I'm scrolling past is called the dock. And that's where the icons appear. If they have a little dot below them, that means they're in memory. Like this is in memory, Google Chrome is in memory. And if they don't have a little dot below it, they haven't been opened yet, so they're not in memory. So let's go over to BlueStacks and show you that. So you asked about the Wyze cameras. And I have installed a program called TinyCam, and they have a free version of it or a pro version. The pro version is all of $3.99. And the pro version allows me to set up multiple cameras so I can view them all at the same time. And I can't do that with the Wyze app. I can only view one camera at a time. So there is no way that I can install TinyCam Pro on an Apple device. They don't make it for the iOS devices like my iPad. But they do make it for Android devices. So again, this is BlueStacks. And so I can install any Android device on BlueStacks. And I'll show you this one real quick. This is called TiviMate. And TiviMate allows me to watch live TV. Now, I don't think you can hear it because I got my speakers turned off. But TiviMate allows me to watch IPTV, Internet Protocol Television. So I have a subscription to Apollo Group TV. So I can also watch those literally hundreds and thousands of Internet Protocol television through Apollo Group TV, which costs me about $15 a month. And TiviMate is just another application that makes it a little a better interface to watch my IPTV with. If I had multiple services, which I do, I could switch between those services. So here's where I have the TinyCam Pro icon, so I can switch to that. I also have Cyberflix TV, which is an app that you can watch TV shows and episodes from everything from Gunsmoke up into what was aired last night with no commercials. And Typhoon TV is another one. So again, these are all apps that you can install using BlueStacks. And I'm going to go ahead at this point, and my mouse moved here. I'm going to go into my iPad for a moment. And I'm going to go into screen mirroring rather. And I'm going to set that up to mirror the screen on my iPad through Airplay. So we talked about Airplay a little bit earlier, and the fact that I use a program called Reflector Teacher to allow me to share Airplay screen mirroring with different people in the audience. So when I'm giving a live presentation to a group of people and they have a question about their iPhone, I can actually bring their iPhone up on my screen and watch it using Airplay. This is the Wise app that exists on my iPad. And Wise introduced a new camera recently called the V3. It's the same price as the V2 camera, but the quality is phenomenal compared to the version 2 camera. And the camera sells for about $20. You can buy them at Home Depot. And you can purchase by default, they give you a 20-second screen recording when motion is detected. But if you want to continue that motion detection and keep recording after 12 seconds, you can subscribe to their Cam Plus subscription service. And that allows you to watch more than 12 seconds. Now I put a 32 gigabyte SD card in all of my cameras, so I can actually go back in time and view everything that's been recorded. But if I go to events for a moment, let's go to that. You will see all of the Cam Plus cameras that are set up, and I don't have all of them set up, just a few. They record whether you are looking at a vehicle, how long that vehicle was in view, or whether it was motion, or whether a person was detected. So if I wanted to go over and pick one of these, for example, I'll pick the backyard camera. That's one of the new V3 cameras. You'll see here that my yard man was out doing my yard this morning, and that is the motion that it detected. This is not one of them that has the Cam Plus subscription on it, so I only got 21 seconds of viewing. But then if I go down to playback and select that and view the playback, oops, I'm touching the screen on my computer instead of on my iPad. Now you'll see that I have not only that 12-second video, but I have everything that happened after that. And if I zoom in, what you see here is something I 3D printed. Hello, connection failed. I got too much stuff going on. But what you see there is something I printed on my 3D printer, and it's a bird feeder that is repels squirrels, and it has a ball bearing mounted to that cage, so that if a bird lands on the little peg, it can feed off of the peanut butter and seeds that I have in there. But if a squirrel comes down and jumps on there, he's going to get thrown off. So let's get out of here and go back. And so as you see, I can select whether I want to eliminate motion, for example. So in this particular case, I'm only going to see events that that had persons or cameras associated with them. So I have set up which cameras I want to look at and which cameras have the Cam Plus subscription turned on. I only have 2 cameras with the Cam Plus subscription on them. Actually, I have 3. But I think this third one is just not enabled. So that's why it's not showing up. So we'll cancel out of that. Or I could go in here and look at all the cameras individually. Now, the Wyze cameras also work with Amazon Alexa. And I hate to say her name because she's gonna talk to me here. But I have all my cameras tied up with the Amazon app where I can use routines. And I can detect motion from the cameras and have it trigger a routine. And I also have smart devices for all of my lights. All of my lights are activated by speaking to the A girl and telling her which light I want to turn on. Or I can group my lights and have them turned on. And so out on my rail here, whereas if you see the driveway here, if I click on the driveway, for example, this one was done in black and white. This is my wife getting home just a moment ago, and took my train of thought. So I can. What was I going to say? I was using the A girl. So, okay. So right here on the rail is, I have another device. It's a Echo, a small Echo. And I have a motion sensor set up on that Echo as well. So that when anybody walks up my walkway to my front door, it triggers that motion sensor. And the motion sensor uses the Amazon app to talk to the person and tell them that I know that they are there. And if they have a delivery for me, they can leave it at the front door. If not, I know they're there and I'll be there to see them in just a moment. So that same trigger also triggers the Echo devices in my home, and they announce that there is a visitor at the door. So the Wyze cams have the ability to, the version 2 has the ability to add sensors. It has a motion sensor that can be added. It's a little 1-inch square device with a sticky, removable sticky back thing that you can stick it anywhere and detect motion. And it also has sensors that stick on with adhesive tape to your doors or windows, so that when the doors or windows open, that triggers an alarm, and I can have that alarm do whatever I want it to do within the Amazon app. So,
Larry, absolutely outstanding info about the Wyze. I know a lot of us are, using the products. Bob G and Bill James both have the new vacuums and they're loving them. I've got a ton of questions here. I don't know if Bill has any, but I'm ready to ask the questions.
okay.
I have some also.
Let me get rid of the screen.
I'm older, I get to go first.
Okay.
Let me stop the mirroring here. And let me get out of this. And now I'll take questions.
Would you unshare your screen, please, so we can see everybody?
All right. There we go.
Okay. Ellie wants to know, is the iMac Pro also going to be discontinued?
I've read something to that effect. I don't know. We're not talking about the laptop. We're talking about the Apple device that has everything enclosed, and it has the display, the computer, everything is built into one piece. That is the device that I have heard they're going to discontinue.
Bill would like to know, is there some reason you haven't updated to the latest version of the OS?
The biggest reason is that I might have to repurchase some of the apps that I have. I believe when you get up as far as Big Sur, only 64-bit apps will work on that. And so I may lose the functionality of any 32-bit apps that I have. And I'm perfectly happy with this particular version, although I was happy with High Sierra for a long time, and I only upgraded to Mojave so that I could get dark mode, which is something that I like. But something did break in the process, and that thing that broke was when I watch a YouTube video and I put it up in full screen. If the mouse doesn't stay moving around ever so often, the screen goes into a kind of a grayed out-ish image. It's not real perfectly clear. But I can get rid of that by going into Google Chrome settings and taking off hardware acceleration. But on the other hand, I need hardware acceleration for the drone application that I run in Google Chrome. So I do have to switch the hardware acceleration on and off depending on what I'm doing. And I did not have that problem with High Sierra. That was something that got introduced when I went to Mojave.
A follow-up on that is, Will asks, from what he understands, the new Mac Mini does not use an Intel processor. It uses the Apple M1. Have you heard if Windows apps can run on this processor?
The M1 is very new, and I have not I've not learned a whole lot about that. So I have heard some unfavorable things. I forgot what it was, but I usually watch Google News and go through that daily, and I saw some things that the M1 was not working properly on. I'm sure all that will get fixed in time, but it is a new processor, and it's gonna create problems, I'm sure, for a period of time until everybody, gets synchronized with it. So I would not be encouraging anyone to get an M1 at this point. As with anything brand new out of the gate, there's going to be issues, and I prefer not to deal with those myself.
Well, we'll just ask Bill James if he's having any issues with his M1 processor.
Well, I'm kind of a relatively new user of Macs, but I did trade in my old 2012 version that was running a Intel processor to the new one. And I do run the Microsoft Office products, and I haven't had any problems with those. There is something about some products have to be optimized for the new processor. And so if that's required, I've noticed that the machine will do it on its own. But I run mostly Microsoft products. I don't have that many applications on, but the ones I've used is working fine.
Thank you. Ellie would like to know if you recommend installing apps only in the admin user profile.
Well, that's the only way I install my apps. I could log in as not as an admin user, but a group user or whatever. But I like to be able to do everything with my computer that it allows me to do. So I don't want to fuss around with guest logins and such. I install everything through the, I don't necessarily install everything as an admin user option, but if it requires it, it asks me for it, I certainly give it the permission that it needs to do that. I'm not afraid of it. I have had my Mac since 2012, and I'm a power user, if you will. And I have installed pirated copies of some applications, going to places that you might think it would be very, very risky. And to my knowledge, I've never gotten bit by doing that. The few times that Avast has flagged a problem has been when an email attachment has come in that was a Windows attachment, or in the one case where I showed you that a JPEG file had been somehow managed to be corrupted by malware. I didn't even think that was possible until that happened. But I do run Avast, and I've been, maybe knock on wood, very fortunate. I've never, in all of the places I've gone, which should have probably been trouble, I've never had a problem.
Thank you. And I'm going to throw this question over to Bob G. Is Avast also good for protection in iPads and iPhones? Unmute yourself, please. You're still muted. John, can you unmute Bob, please?
He is.
No, he's not. Yes,
There
he
he
is.
is.
iOS devices, no, there's no such thing as a third-party antivirus for iOS. You get your patches directly from Apple. And I do want to thank Larry for his endorsement of Avast for those that are on the Mac.
Yeah, as I understand, I believe, Bob, you gave presentations, 2 of them, to the Lake Sumter Computer Society.
I sure have.
And I believe you gave one at Lake Leesburg as well.
Yes.
And we appreciate those.
Carol would like to know if multiple users, can they all use any application installed on the Mac, or do some applications have to be installed per user?
They usually give you the option if you want to install it for all users or just some. I always install it for all users, but I don't have anyone other than myself using the computer other than, so it's really not an issue for me.
George would like to know, because of the cost, can I load Mac OS on a VM in BSD or Linux? And what does the Mac OS cost?
The Mac OS does not cost anything. It is free. It has always been free. And using Parallels Desktop, I did install Mac OS Catalina on Parallels Desktop. So yes, you can install it in a virtual machine.
Like Oracle's virtual box.
I don't know about VirtualBox. I guess that's probably a Windows machine application. So I'm not, again, I'm not unfamiliar with how that would work on Windows. I'm a Mac user, so Parallels Desktop is what I use to install other operating systems.
When using Parallels on a Mac for using Windows on a Mac, do you need to partition your hard drive specifically, especially when saving files? And that's from Jack.
No, absolutely not. If you'll allow me for a moment, I will share my screen and show you that for real quickly. Okay, Parallels Desktop. So if I go over to Launchpad and I type Parallels Client, Parallels Desktop. So here is Parallels Desktop starting up. And as you see, currently I only have 3 of them that are installed, but they're all asleep right at the moment. So I have Mint Linux installed here. I have Windows 10. And if I click on the little arrow, it will resume operation. And that is going to open up in its own window, which I can move around and interact with, and it will have access to the files that are on my Mac computer as well. They can be mapped. I'm not sure that Windows 10 does it automatically versus Windows 7, for example. So I'll bring up Windows 10 and Windows 7 to show you that you can have multiple windows open at the same time. Now, it does require a fairly stout computer. I have an i7 computer. This is not a genuine copy of Windows, but so as you see, I can move these windows around. Get rid of that. And I think if I go into, yes, so if I go into Windows Explorer, I have access not only to the C drive of Windows 7, but I also have access to all of my files on my Mac, my 2 terabyte drive and my 3 terabyte drive. So I have access to all of those files in addition to what is on my Windows 7 machine.
Cool, thank you.
So
this is kind of a question for you and maybe Bob too. Neil would like to know about free CCleaner for Mac. You're using another, cleaning program, but apparently CCleaner has one.
Well, CCleaner is for Windows. I don't know that that works on a Mac.
Over to Bob. Unmute yourself. John, unmute Bob, please.
CCleaner works just fine in Mac.
It does?
Yes, it does. It works on Mac just as well as in Windows, and it also works on your Chrome.
Cool. Thank you, Bob.
That's good to know.
Fusion works really well for doing all kinds of virtual machines too.
What does?
Fusion.
Fusion.
VMware Fusion works perfect.
Oh, good. It's good to know. See, I learned something too.
Larry, what browser is your primary browser?
Well, mostly I stick with Google Chrome. And I will go to Safari from time to time, but Google Chrome is my primary browser.
Jack would like to know, said an interesting comment about 2012 units, but isn't there a limit as to how far the motherboard will allow you to upgrade the OS?
Yes, there is. I don't think you can go up as far as, I don't know if it stops at Catalina or Big Sur, but it does.
Catalina installed in my 2012 Mac Mini.
Okay. So yeah.
It's got 16 gigabytes of memory, and that's as far as the motherboard will accept memory. And it's got 2 SSDs installed as well.
Okay.
Carol would like to know, is 4 GB of memory sufficient for a Mac Mini?
Well, I have 16 gigabytes installed as well as Art. It'll work on 4, but if you want to do multitasking, for instance, the things that I'm doing with having multiple operating systems open at the same time, you're going to want to have more memory for that.
Chris would like to know if you can screen share to Smart TV or Roku.
Art is saying yes.
I'm asking you.
But I don't have a Roku. I stream to a Fire Stick. That's how I get to my big screen TV.
I stream straight to the Vizio television. And I also.
Howard would like to know is, what are the best websites to shop for those used Apple computers?
Well, I use OfferUp.com. That is
Offer, OFFERUP.
yes, OfferUp.com. Also eBay. OfferUp gives you access to the local community. So you can specify a 10-mile range, for example, and you will only see items that are for sale within a 10-mile range. But it's also a little bit risky. For instance, 3 or 4 years ago, we negotiated to buy a laptop, a Mac laptop, from someone in Ocala, which was an hour drive from here. And they obviously know you're coming with cash. So we went to what turned out to be an empty apartment building, and we possibly could have been robbed had it not been for a sheriff's car parked right next to us.
Yep. That's the word. Go to the cop shop.
So, you know, it's if you're going to do OfferUp, I recommend what I do now is we meet in a public place. There are some places that are actually the local police department sets up a trading zone, if you will, where they have video cameras on you, and you can go there to safely trade or exchange money for things that you're buying. That's obviously dependent on where you live.
Larry would like to know, how would you use Mission Control to set up separate users on the computer? Would they have access to other users' content?
I don't use Mission Control for other users. So I've never tried that. Maybe Art would know.
I can answer that.
No. You.
Oh, yeah, this is the Mac Sig leader from Columbus Computer Society.
Go ahead, Craig.
It depends on how you have the file permissions set up on individual files on whether other users can get at them or not. And you can use system preferences, the users and groups, to add new users to your system.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will has 3 questions regarding Time Machine. 1, how far back in time are app files archived, and how many versions are archived?
They go back as far as when you initially installed the Time Machine, when you first engaged it with a disk. And as to how many backups that you can store depends on the size of your backup drive. So if you put a 3 terabyte drive on there, you could essentially keep backups for a long while. And if that did fill up, it will overwrite the oldest version.
In case the system drive goes down, does Time Machine have an option to save the backups on a second drive or in iCloud?
Well, I use another program called Carbon Copy Cloner. And I make a carbon copy clone of my disk drive, and I actually archive that one away completely off of my computer for a period of time. So maybe once a month, I will go by and reclone my drive to have that drive available to boot into. But you can also boot into Time Machine. But if for some reason you got a virus that corrupted not only your disk drive, but also your Time Machine disk drive, that's why I recommend having a third one that you keep isolated for a period of maybe once a month, that you go in and you do not keep it connected to your device, to your computer. It stays safely away so that nothing can get to it. And that's the safest way that I know of to protect everything.
The third question is, does Time Machine provide a function to migrate files to a new Mac? What method do you recommend migrating files to a new Mac?
Yes. Yes, you can do that, and you can drag and drop them, or there's also the migration assistant, which can be used to migrate your files from one Mac to another, or from a PC to a Mac.
Thomas says he has several old Macs and old Mac OSs that are still workable. Can he use those on the web?
Sure.
Okay. Kathleen says she has a Mac Pro that she bought about 8 years ago. It needs a new battery. I was quoted from an Apple affiliate store that it'll cost $600. It sounds as though my Mac Pro might be one of those from around 2012. Can I upgrade my computer for a lesser cost than $600 for a battery?
Yes, she must have been talking to a scammer.
Oh.
You can upgrade your battery. I don't know exactly what the cost is. They're probably under $50, I'm guessing. I'd have to look it up on Amazon, but to replace it on one of the laptops, you unscrew about eight to 10 screws. You do need a special screwdriver to get to the battery. It's got three sides, so it's called a tri screwdriver, and that's the only screwdriver that'll work on that particular screw that holds the battery in. So you need to order that screwdriver, or if you go to some of these places, they sell a kit where you get the battery and the screwdriver with it all at the same time. But it's relatively easy to change the battery on the laptops. And of course, the Mac Mini does not have a battery to worry about.
Yeah, it's the screwdriver that costs $500.
Oh, John, I was going to say that. I was going to say it would be a bargain at $500. Kathleen says her son just bought a Mac Air, which has the new CPU. He loves it. It's fast. He records music with lots of tracks, and he's loving it. Bill says his 9-year-old Mac Pro freezes for 5 or more minutes. He finds it's just best to wait it out. He suspects that his older version of MS Word might be doing that. I'm about to upgrade to a new version of Word. Does that make any sense? He is on Mojave.
Well, yep, my view is I won't put anything that has the word Microsoft on it on my computers. Ron Waksberg, who's also on here, is one of the members that he was a client of mine for 17 years when he had his tour boat business. And I talked him into a Mac, and so now he has replaced all of his computers except for one with the Mac. And I think he speaks highly of the Mac as well.
I have 10 more questions. I'm going to stop asking them because I'm going to send you those, Larry, and you can answer them, and then I'll send them out to all of the attendees.
All right.
Bill, how about you? Do you have questions different than mine? You're muted, Bill.
Hello, Bill.
Yes, I have several that mostly have to do with Microsoft Office. The first one is.
Okay, if it has to do, let's save your several and add them to mine and go into open Q&A, okay?
All right, let's see. Yes, all right.
Bob, you had your hand up forever, and then I called on you, but not for a question, but an answer. Can you unmute everybody, please, John? Thank you.
Judy?
My question was answered.
Oh, pooh. Okay, does anybody else have a real live question?
Judy, Ron Roxburgh. Not a live question, but just merely affirmation of the Mac service. I had a computer go down. I used to have a business. I had a computer go down on a Sunday, on a holiday weekend. I got a hold of somebody. You go through a couple of steps. I actually got it fixed. It was a software issue. Try doing that with Microsoft products. It's hopeless. So if you need to have something done and done on a timely basis, look at the Macs.
And they
Thanks
did
for the invite.
And they did it without a charge.
Yes.
I had a similar situation with a hardware problem. They replaced my disk drive and they did it on a Sunday.
Wow.
And then you have our Apple store here in the Santa Clarita Valley that doesn't do anything for anybody anymore. If you need to buy something, you order it from the store in Pasadena. You go over, you line up on the sidewalk. My son-in-law said it's like going to the bank when you walk in with all the cubbies and everything. So for all intents and purposes in the mall, ours is gone. And my bet is it's freeway close and it has been robbed many times. Easy in, easy out. Don't forget to use the reactions button to raise your hand. I'd love for everybody to do that because sometimes we don't see raised hands. And if you don't know how to do that, it's reactions on your toolbar and raise hand. Neil.
Yes, I noticed that Time Machine makes backups very frequently, and it seems like that would use a lot of resources, and I couldn't see any control to get it to back up less frequently. For example, I would only want to be backed up maybe once a week or something like that. Is there any such control? And I also am trying a third-party application, maybe not approved by Apple, called something like Time Machine Editor, which does give you the option.
You can't use it anymore.
No?
No, it doesn't work on current OSs.
The Time Machine only backs up incrementally, so it does not take up a lot of storage space. And it does this in the background. And whenever a file changes, it does it automatically. And again, it's only a difference. That could come into play if you had, say, one of the virtual machine files, which is huge. You wouldn't want to back that up, but you can set up exclusions so that if you have a file like that, you don't want that to back up periodically. You could exclude a file from the Time Machine.
Al, you had your hand raised. It's gone now. Did you get your question answered?
No, I was going to comment about your
I guess he did. Bill Ginsberg, you're on.
I'm an architect, and when I started on Windows because Apple, the great graphics computer, had zero applications for CAD programs. And so I started with a small company, not the big gorillas. It's 50 people in Connecticut, and I really have liked them, and they never went to Apple. About 9 years ago, I thought I would try a MacBook, and I got to like it. And what's kept me there is their customer service. It is so superior. Before the COVID days, I'd just walk into an Apple store. I'm in New York City, and you'd ask the first greeter about your question, and they would try and say, oh, no, let me get Charlie. He knows about this. And she'd run around the store and find Charlie, and he would do it. And then they have the genius bar. Well, they're not geniuses. Edison was a genius. Mozart was a genius, but they're very smart, and they're in particular areas. And it's truly their customer service that it's absolutely worth the price, paying more. I had a slogan for my architectural clients: cheap is too expensive.
I do, if I could interrupt a moment, I do a lot of 3D rendering and such myself with a program called Fusion 360, which allows you to do three-dimensional things and design almost anything you can imagine, from architecture to from bicycle seats to just about everything that you can imagine.
Do you have a CAD program that you have used?
I have used to use SketchUp, but mostly now everything I can do everything with Fusion 360.
I'll have a look at it.
Howard?
Yes, I wondered what was the easiest way to identify the model year?
Go up to the left-hand corner where the Apple is, and then select About This Mac.
There's nothing on the outside that identifies it?
No.
Okay.
Not unless you've got a hand lens.
Over to Bob.
Yeah, I wanted to let Larry know that thanks to his review of the cameras, I just ordered Tiny Cam because I have a couple of those nice Wise cameras. Hope you're getting a commission.
That is so funny. That's how it goes in our world. Bill James gets Herman, that is the Wise robot vacuum. Bob's now got Alice too, who's his robot vacuum. The word travels. Bob started out with the Wise scale. Bill kind of did too. So it's all word of mouth around here. And can you guys tell that I'm going to ask Larry to be giving a presentation on 3D printing at one of the virtual technology conferences? Over to you, Art.
First, there's a program called Onyx, and it works. You have to get the right version of Onyx for whatever Mac operating system you're using. And it will go in and do all kinds of interesting utility things to fix whatever's wrong with any of your permissions or anything like that. It's a little bit more inclusive than the basic disk first aid kind of process. It will. And I was just going to say that I took my Mac Pro, my 2010 Mac Pro, which is that 60-pound cheese grater, into the Mac store in Minneapolis. And I had to make an appointment, but they literally were able, or they tried to put a new operating system in it, and they didn't charge me anything. Okay. So under Apple Care or whatever, they were willing to take on the risk or waste the time of trying to install an operating system in a 10-year-old computer. And I think that once you start thinking about the total cost of ownership for a Mac, you might want to reconsider this idea of these cheap PCs when you have a problem like on a Sunday and you need some help. And the other thing I was going to say is the Mac Geek Gab is an incredible podcast that talks about everything Mac. And you're going to have to watch it or listen to it over a period of time. But man, they got so many people talking about so many things. Their moniker is learn 5 new things every time they have a podcast, which is pretty much on the up and up. And they have basically users talking about things that they've found that are really cool that you can do with the Mac, and I'm done.
Would you repeat that
All right,
name?
could you put that in the chat box, please, so I could
Sure.
send what you just recommended? Because you kind of cut out there for a minute. I don't know if that was you or me. I do have to share that Bill is trying, he's a Windows kid. He's a Windows insider. He took on the Chromebook. He loved learning about that. He has a new Mac, and he attends Craig's MacSig for the Columbus Computer Society. Bill lives in Oklahoma. So the group sharing meetings is really advantageous. If you don't have it in your club, you can go to somebody else's group and join in on a general meeting or a special interest group and learn about stuff. Over to you, Craig.
In fact, I just recently joined the Prescott Valley Mac user group in Arizona, and I've been to their meetings 3 or 4 times. Their next one is Saturday. So let me know if you want an invite, because you have to pre-register.
But all you need to do is Google Prescott Computer Society and go to their website. They have a link on the page where you get on JB's email list, and you will be notified of every single meeting. They have an absolutely fantastic digital SIG. Some of their general meetings are just JB free thinking of stuff. I learned more about electricity one time that I didn't think I needed to know, but it was extremely interesting, and I was glad I was at the meeting.
And another tool that you might want to consider in addition to Onyx is to install Tinker Tool. T-I-N-K-E-R.
They don't overlap.
Huh?
They don't overlap. There is
but-
some overlap between the two, but they're both useful.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, it is useful to have both of them. But there are some things they do together, but some things different. But it's also an excellent tool.
Spell that again.
T-I-N-K. I'll put it. Can I put it in chat?
I already did.
Okay.
Tinker Tool.
Tinker Tool. Like Tinker Toys.
Tinker
only
Toys
tool.
from back in the day.
Yeah. And another backup program to try in addition to Carbon Copy Cloner is one called Super Duper. And they're similar products.
Is Super Duper free, or is that a paid?
There is a free version. It works pretty well. And there's also paid versions that let you schedule backups and things like that.
You guys certainly have jazzier names for your programs than we Windows people do.
Yeah.
See little things.
Yeah, and Super Duper is a very nice piece of software, easy to use.
I like a program called Super Eraser that allows you to remove things from photos.
Oh, that'd be an interesting application to have.
It's on the list. Bill, did you raise your hand, and that's why you're in the lower left-hand corner of my gallery view?
I did. I just had a question. There were several allusions to Apple Care, and I was just wondering what everyone's opinion is of that. Is it worth the cost of subscribing to that?
How much does it cost?
Well, it depends on what you're getting Apple Care for, but it's $120 or so for a Mac, for a laptop. And I have an iMac, and they only normally give you a 1-year warranty, but with Apple Care, it extends it to 3 years. And I took my, not this iMac, a previous one, into the Apple store on a Sunday. I had to make an appointment. And I was pretty sure the hard drive had died, but I didn't tell them that. And they looked in about 2 minutes. They said, your hard drive's dead. And I said, yeah, I sort of suspected that. And they said, unfortunately, we're out of 500 megabyte or gigabyte drives. And I said, oh, and I was teaching then at a community college here in Columbus. And I said, I use it to do my grading. And he goes, just a minute. He went back in the back room and he came back out and he said, well, if you don't mind, we can put a 740 in it. And I go, And I go, let me think. Yeah, that'd be fine. And it cost me nothing. And the only question they asked me is which operating system, what version of the OS I had on it. And I told them. And about an hour and a half later, or maybe an hour later, they called me and said, it's ready. So I went back that Sunday afternoon and picked it up, brought it home. And of course, it's just like you got a new Mac. It goes through the little welcome stuff and all that. And after it asked my app for my Apple ID and everything, it said, do you want to restore data from Time Machine or from another backup or migrate data from another Mac? And I said, well, I'm going to restore from a Time Machine backup. I plugged my drive in. He said, is this the drive? And I said, yes. And about an hour and a half later, it had restored everything. And the only thing that was different is I had about 100 emails that I had already read that it marked them as unread. That was the only, and I said, well, that's not a big deal. So is Apple Care worth it? Absolutely, especially on laptops, because you take them and travel them around, they get banged up a little bit. iPhones, you can get it where if you drop the phone and break it, they'll replace it a couple times for a fee, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a new iPhone because they're not cheap.
I need to let everybody know that, and don't forget that you need to have your first and last name on your thumbnail. If it says Jane's iPad, you are not going to get anything from me because I need your first and last name to marry it up with the name that you use to register. That's the way you get the stuff after the workshop. And you will be getting a link to the YouTube video, the Q&A, and the carbon copies and the super dupies and stuff like that that I've been adding in there. And I am going to ask Larry to send me a list of all of the stuff that he talked about that was different, that was he uses in addition to his OS that he talked about in the presentation, so I can let you guys all know about that too. So first and last names, exactly how you registered, and you will be a happy camper within the next couple of days. If you don't get anything, it's your own fault. This is your mother speaking. Ellie, you're on.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to check about the cables for USB-C for connecting to an external hard drive, say an SSD for Time Machine, and a drive about formatting for Apple formats. And then the other thing, I just, if you could answer that, but I wanted to mention about AutoCAD for, I believe it was Bill Ginsberg, an architect from New York. So AutoCAD, I used to use it and teach it. They had a Mac version way back when, and they stopped it. It took years, so people were using Parallels and other VirtualBox to set it up using the Windows version. But AutoCAD, Autodesk, the publisher, came out with a Mac version about 10 years ago. So that's probably a good bet, and it's a steep learning curve, but it's one of the best programs, CAD programs for architecture and such. So if Larry could mention about the cabling and the formatting of the drives for the backup.
Yes, let me tell you what not to do. Do not format your drive with syntax, I forget what they call it, where it's case sensitive. Don't do that. Format it so that it's the
it's HFS plus for your Time Machine.
Yeah, but don't select the one there where it's case sensitive.
I would suggest that you do format it that way if your hard drive is also formatted that way.
Well, the reason I say no is because I formatted mine with case sensitivity. And I mentioned in my presentation that I like to play Farm Simulator. Farm Simulator has a version called Steam, is where you can get it installed through the cloud. And because I installed it with case sensitivity, they would not allow me to install it off of Steam. So
Oh, interesting.
I wished I had not have done that. And it's going to take quite a bit of effort to undo that. I'm going to have to first format a drive without case sensitivity. And then I'm hoping that I'll be able to take a carbon copy cloner and be able to restore it from that without having it revert back to case sensitive. So
John Kennedy and his son, Chris, gave a tabletop simulator over Steam Workshop at the February 13 VTC. And it was extremely interesting. And John and Betty and Christopher and his wife in Henderson, Nevada, play tabletop games together every Saturday night. Over to you, Bill. You get these little tidbits from me, whether you want them or not, okay?
well, we appreciate them.
Over
Nothing
to Bill.
wrong with that.
He didn't answer about the cables and the connection, like USB-C 3.
Oh, well, the newer Macs use USB-C. So the older ones, like the 2012 that I have, use the old USB 2. I don't believe they even have USB 3 ports on those. You have to get into the newer models to get that. If you use the USB-C, the ones that have one connection on them, if you want to connect anything else to them, you're going to have to go through an extender.
Yeah, get a hub.
A hub, yeah. That's the
Bill,
proper
it's
word.
really your turn this time. Talk quick. Unmute, unmute, unmute.
Is that me? Yes.
Yep.
I just wanted to comment that I always got the extended guarantee, which expired years ago, and Apple just didn't care. They just answer the questions anyway. I think they're just glad that you paid them something extra. And just another comment on the CAD program. The one that I've used on the PC is called DataCAD. Very nice company, and I'm used to that. So I'm going to try Parallels. And when I had another question, what was it? Oh, yes. I forgot to try and make a videotape of this session. Is there one available?
Judy, you just want.
Yeah, we record all of these workshops and all of our VTCs. You'll be getting a notice about that if you are registered and we have your first and last name.
You have my first and last. I'll even give you my middle name.
No, thank you.
Okay, excellent session. Very well done.
Thank you.
Yes, Debbie, you had a question, but your hand's gone now. Do you still have that question?
Unmute, Debbie. There you go.
Okay. I was just going to say that I was one of Larry's convert about 2 years ago. And I don't even think I need Apple support with him. He's like his own empire. He's so knowledgeable. He's so kind. Could be 3 or 4 calls in a day. And he's like, never has a harsh tone. He says, I've told you before, let's do it again. You know, so kind. And this has just been a blessing to be able to tap into such a knowledgeable group of people. I'm so grateful to know about the computer societies. And Judy, I didn't quite get it. I see my first name on the board here, but not my last. Is that what you're referring to?
You need to right click on your thumbnail picture and rename yourself.
And otherwise I would not.
That will add your last name.
And that's what I need to do. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually the first thing you need to do when you go into any Zoom meeting.
Oh, I wondered how it just shows up. Okay. So thank you for a great meeting.
Thank you. Guys, don't forget to read what's in my emails. I'm a 22-year-old senior tech teacher here, and I include all that kind of stuff because even if you know how to do it, I assume you don't. Any other raised? Oh, Ellie's got another question. Thank you.
Well, a question and or a comment about the say MacBook. I'm sorry, Mac Pro. So I think it was Art who brought that up, or Chris. The price of that compared to a PC to put in full, say, graphics programs like CAD programs, image editing, Photoshop and such, it's so much more. It was, when I looked, it was about $5,000.
That's a Mac Pro.
Mac Pro.
But, yeah.
But to get the interchangeability and the upgradability, very expensive.
It's not a toaster Mac. You have to figure out what kind of components you want to put in it.
Right, it's customizable.
Yep.
Do we have any more questions? I just want to let Kurt Trout know that my youngest daughter flew into Minneapolis yesterday and is now in Wisconsin. Probably really cold.
No, she's getting wet though.
Yeah, Stacy. She flew back there for one of her hockey mom's 50th birthday. It's a surprise.
To say it's 70 degrees in Columbus right now. So.
Oh, stop it.
It was 60. It was 60 here yesterday.
Oh, well, then she might feel at home because it's raining here. Anyway, if you guys don't have any more questions, I will, by golly, I will save my chat one more time here. Not like I haven't already done it 13 times. And thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for Larry. Let me know what you want to do next, please, other than your 3D printer presentation that I'm going to be asking you about. If you guys have any ideas for workshops, let us know. If you don't have to do them by yourself. It's like MailChimp is going to have Bill from Oklahoma and 2 people from Ellie's group, the Westchester group in New York. So we can put a team together. We have a Linux team. If you are a Linux guru or guruette, you can join the Linux team. Next, this is Mac. Learn about Macs this Wednesday. Learn more about Linux is next Wednesday, and that is Linux number 6. And then on March 31st, we are having Backup Day. It is World Backup, and everybody who attends is going to need to take the World Backup Day pledge. Okay, so thank you so much. Over to you, John, for doing what you do at the end of every single workshop. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I would like to thank Larry for sharing with us about macOS. And the reason for having this workshop is that APCUG is trying to make sure that our member groups know that we are just not a Windows group, that we are a technology group, which covers all 3 operating systems with Linux, Windows, and Mac, and all devices. We're not just a computer group. So we're trying to branch out. So if you have ideas for topics, or if you want to share a topic, a short topic for a VTC or a little bit longer in a workshop, please let us know. We'd like to have more people, and we have time for that. As Judy said, we will email those who were in attendance. We'll get the link to the video and the material. And then after a while, it'll become public on our YouTube channel. But for you who attend, you get that. So we'll see many of you next week. Go ahead, Judy.
G will not be getting anything. Jerry, just plain Jerry, won't be getting anything because there are like 5 or 6 Jerrys. So this is your last chance. I don't want anybody's email address in here. That's not going to do me any good. And you know, this is all about me and all my post event stuff that I have to put together. But everybody else that's left is good to go. So thank you so much for all of you for remembering how to follow preschool instructions. Thank you so much.
And thank you. I learned some things myself today, and that is what these things are all about.
Absolutely.
We all learned something.
Outstanding. And I like when I've sat in Jerry Minnick's iPhone and things. I'm a Google Pixel kid, and I've had his handouts. I fully confident I could buy an iPhone, and what Jerry does at his meetings with his handouts, I could do the same thing with Larry. If I wanted to go to the other side of the world after this presentation, I would feel confident as a lifelong Windows person that I could do it. So this is what I love about this. It's way cool. Goodbye.
We'll see everybody next time. Everybody have a good rest of your week. And don't forget, Saturday night or Sunday morning, early, change your clocks, because next week, if you show up at 12 and you haven't changed your clock, you'll miss an hour of it.